Welcome to me ranting about random stuff in the world. Today's topic: 5 important things to know about Chinese politics. Number 1: what kind of country is China? What category does it belong to? Is it a good country, a bad country, a big country, a small country? What kind of description? What kind of political description, especially, would you give to China? Well, if you grow up here in America, as you been through the American education system, as you watch American news, as you hear Americans talk, you come across a commonly dedicated phrase to describe China. China is a communist country. But is it? Is it? Because from what I'm reading, especially if you open up the Chinese constitution, which most people in this country have never seen one, and even if they have seen one, they've never read it. But if you actually read the Constitution of the People's Republic of China, at the very beginning, you see this phrase instead: socialist country. Now, you may ask yourself, well, socialism, communism, that's just the same thing, right? Same red scare, commie, dangerous thing that we ought to be very scared of. Well, I don't know about getting scared of, but you may hold whatever feeling you have about communism or socialism. That's up to you. That's your own individual freedom. But when it comes to China, I would indeed say that China is not a communist country. Instead, China is a socialist country. Because, to put it very shortly, and you can read up about this more specifically on your own, because I just simply don't have time to go into the exact difference. But socialist country, in short, is a system where you still have a government led by a communist party, or whatever name you may put to the party, and it has certain levels of central planning. It might have a market economy, but a significant part of the economy is still owned and operated by the state or state-owned enterprises. Hence, it still have a state. It still has a government. Communism is a state of society where there is no more state. There is no more government. Because in order to have state-owned enterprise and central planning, you need to have a government. You need to have a strong central government to do all of this. But in communism, in a communist society, you no longer have any of this state structure or a government structure. You have a classless society where you don't need a political party anymore, where you don't need a powerful government anymore. There is no more state, nation, or country boundaries anymore. So that is why the Chinese people, they call themselves a socialist country, because they recognize that they're not communist yet. They have not yet reached the stage of a communist society. So that is why they call themselves socialist. And I'm someone who prefer to call someone in a way that they prefer to call themselves. I do this with my friends, my family, people I know, and I do this, in countries that I analyze and study. This is one of my interests, to study politics and history of countries, and I do prefer to call them by the name that they call themselves. So, this is what China is. It is a socialist country. Number 2: what kind of job does the Chinese leader Xi Jinping have? Xi Jinping is, as we know, the leader of the People's Republic of China. But what does that mean? What does it mean to be the leader of China? Well, Xi Jinping right now has 3 titles. the president of the People's Republic of China, the general secretary of the Central Committee of the Communist Party of China, and the chairman of the Central Military Committee of the People's Republic of China and of the Communist Party of China. So he is right now the leader of the country, leader of the party, and leader of the military. He's all three comprised into one. It's like as if Mr. Trump is not only the president of the United States, but he's also the commander in chief of the military, but also he is the chairman of the Republican Party. It's like that. So this means Xi Jinping has control over the government, the political party, and the People's Liberation Army. It's all three in one, very powerful. This was not always the case before the 90s, but since the 90s, the Chinese system have established this rule where the supreme leader of the nation has to have three positions, all three of them combined into one, in order for them to be able to govern the country effectively and establish themselves as the core, as a center of power in the People's Republic of China. Number 3, what do you call the political party that's in charge of China? Is it the Communist Party of China, like I have mentioned before? Or is it what a lot of Westerners would like to call the Chinese Communist Party? Which one is it? Well, if you grew up in Europe or America, you hear the phrase Chinese Communist Party a lot. That's what's on textbooks. That's what's on academic journals. That's what's on news stories. That's what politicians tweet out. But the Chinese call themselves the Communist Party of China. According to one journal article that I read, I read this a very long time ago, so I forgot where it came from. But the author in the article said the reason why there's a difference in the name that we call the Communist Party is because of ideological reasons, obviously. By saying the Chinese Communist Party, the Communist Party itself is the center of attention, and Chinese is merely just an adjective. The idea here is we view the Communist Party as indeed a communist party that just so happens to be in China, thus diminishing the connection between the Chineseness and the communist nature of the party. But by saying the Communist Party of China, it simply belongs to China. Like China has many things that belongs to it. The people of China, the Great Wall of China, the Forbidden City of China, Beijing of China, Shanghai of China, right? These are all mere just belongings to China, and China is the center stage. That's what the Chinese people, that's what the Chinese party is trying to come across is, yes, we are indeed communists, but more importantly, we're here in China, we're Chinese, we're here for China, for the benefit of the Chinese people, right? Thus, it increases the importance of the connection and the importance of the Chinese nature of the party. So, which one do you call it? I personally call it whatever they call themselves. So I call it the Communist Party of China. When you translate it into the Chinese language, it's 中国共产党. Either way, it's 中国共产党. But when you do it in English, there is definitely an ideological connotation to say whether it's Communist Party of China or the Chinese Communist Party. So whichever one you choose, it kind of shows the ideological connotation. But of course, if you don't really care about this, then use whichever one you want. But you know, a lot of the times, if you're in academia or you're in politics or if you're in the news industry, yeah, there is definitely an ideological connotation to whichever way that you choose to name the thing that governs China. Number 4. Did you know that China is a democracy? Well, if you didn't know, well, here is what I think why China is a democracy. Obviously, China is not the kind of democracy that we're familiar with here in America or in the West in general. Here in the West, when we think about democracy, we think about competitive elections, we think about government party, opposition party, we think about politicians yelling at each other. We think about hundreds of billions of dollars, poured into elections. We think about campaigns, election ads, donations. We think about door-to-door knockings. We think about protests. We think about a lot of things. But China's not that. China's democracy looks very different. China's democracy is not a competitive electoral democracy. Instead, China's democracy is what people would call a consultative democracy. Consultations, peaceful discussions, constructive criticisms, and just minimum, very minimum nonsense in comparison to some of the stuff that we may see in the West. You see, in China, besides the Communist Party, there are 8 other smaller political parties and many independent political forces. Under the leadership and guidance of the Communist Party, these different political forces and people of talents and social groups, they come together not to compete with each other to get seats. No, they don't do that. They come together, sit down, and they talk about whatever issue they think are important. They talk, they discuss, they do not compete against each other. There are, of course, interest groups in China, just like we have interest groups in Europe and in America. But in China, interest groups sit down and talk under the leadership of the Communist Party. They talk it through. They work it out. They provide their ideas, their opinions, and sometimes, of course, criticisms. And through long and thorough and repetitive discussions, they come up with solutions that usually works out pretty well. So instead of solutions kind of competing and fighting each other to see who wins, they don't have that mindset in China. They don't have that winner-loser electoral mindset. They have it, only the people shall win in the end. Because nothing is more important than the people. So your ideology, your political infighting, your hunger for power, all of that have to set aside for the greater good, for the benefit of the people. So, is China a democracy? By Western standard, it's not. It's just not. But if we use all Western standard, then nothing would make sense. Because every country have its own specific circumstances and its own backgrounds that will require different things to work differently in their own country. So in my opinion, China is indeed a democracy because it has discussions, it has different ideas, and you are able to express them in a constructive and non-competitive manner. Because competition isn't always good. Competition isn't always the answer. And maybe the answer sometimes, I would agree with that, but not all the time. And in the West, we can clearly see some of the shortcomings of our competitive electoral system, where we perpetually have ideological fights and no one is there to actually govern. So, China indeed is democratic in its own right. It's just it looks very different and works very differently than what we're used to here in America. Number 5. Did you know that the Chinese people who live in China, are just fellow human beings like you and I who live here in the United States of America? Did you know that? Or did you think the Chinese people and people in China are just some sort of red scare communists who are out to get us? Well, if you think that, I can comfortably assure you that people who live in China, the Chinese people, are mostly just regular human beings who work for a living, just like you and I in America. They they breathe oxygen just like you and I. They eat food just like you and I. They drink water just like you and I. They probably have similar worries, similar anxieties, similar fears as you and I here in America. And we are indeed, in so many fashions, just one humankind. The differences that we may see in each other are mostly just arbitrary, manufactured to keep us divided, to keep us afraid of each other, while in the meantime, we really should be working with each other, cooperating instead of fighting. So, that's the last fact about China, politics in China. And this is really going beyond just politics. This is all of us. We are one human being, humankind, all together across the Pacific Ocean, regardless of where we are, where do we grow up, the skin of our color, the language we speak. We're just one human species, together as one. We all bleed, same color of blood. We probably think about similar things. We probably enjoy similar things. We got McDonald's here in America, they got McDonald's there in China. People in China worry about, healthcare, education, retirement. In America here, we worry about similar things. We all, both people of China and America, we seek a better life for ourselves. And sometimes, based on the lies and propaganda made by our politicians, we may think people in China are monsters. They're our competitors. They're our enemies. No, sorry. Sorry to break your bubble, but the people of China, they're not our enemies. And the people of America, we're not the enemies of the Chinese people either. We're not enemies to each other. We should never be. Because the only way for us to survive on this beautiful planet is to know the fact that we're all human beings and we should treat each other like fellow human beings.